Hello everybody, I'm Charlie from Dr. Wen, and welcome along to a brand new Doctor Who YouTube video. As promised, I am back, and today I'm going to be doing the 12th video in a series of 13 videos I've been doing for the last month or two, where I rank all episodes in a certain series of Doctor Who. Today it's time for Series 11. I've previously done Series 1 through 10 plus the 10th Doctor specials, and now it's time to start off the Jodie Whittaker era with Series 11. There are 10 episodes in this, all one-parters, and in general I think it's a very good series. Probably the weaker of the two Chris Chibnall series so far, but I do prefer Series 12, and I think it will progressively get better throughout it. In general, it's not a very well liked series. It's probably lower down on lots of people's lists. I disagree, and I actually think it's very good. It's still in the bottom half of my Series 1 to 12 ranking, but that doesn't mean it's bad. I still think lots of the episodes in this are very good, and yeah, that's why I'm going to be ranking it. I was quite looking forward to doing this video. So feel free to subscribe to the channel and like this video if you want to, and also please, if you want, in the comments down below, post your rankings of Series 11 episodes if you have watched it. I would really appreciate it. Also, there will be some major spoilers for Series 11, so if you haven't seen it, I recommend not watching this video until you've seen Series 11. Then feel free to watch it all you want. And without further ado, let's get into this video. So, in 10th place is Arachnids in the UK, the only entry on this list I would say I don't actually like. I feel like this tries to deal with too much. It deals with Graham going back to his home and dealing with his grief for Grace, who died in The Woman Who Fell to Earth. We have the 13th Doctor and Yaz kind of investigating this conspiracy. And we also have this kind of environmental message with this kind of evil Donald Trump-like businessman who is building hotels all over the world and leaving loads of rubbish underneath them. It doesn't really make that much sense how they mutate and attract spiders. It was a pretty weak plot and definitely a bit of filler. I suppose it does have the environmental message, which is what a lot of 13th Doctor stories do. Other examples of this are probably Praxius and, to an extent, the Ghost Monument, and in general, lots of people don't really like it for that. I think the environmental message is fine. I just think the plot's a bit clunky, and the shifts in tone are quite drastic and quite bad, and the whole conclusion with Ryan playing that awful, if you can even call it music, out of those speakers and it lures the spiders in, it's just a bit ridiculous, and yes, I don't really know what the writers on this one were thinking. However, that's the worst out of the way. I'd say this is the only one I actively hate, but the rest I find anywhere from meh to really good. So, in 9th place, we have The Witchfinders, Episode 8. Lots of people love this. I've heard lots of people, my friends who watch Doctor Who, say that The Witchfinders is their favourite episode of Series 11, which I really disagree with. I think it's not bad. I think the whole sentient mud possessing these kind of dead people from witch trials sounds pretty ridiculous and weird, but it's actually executed incredibly well. A lot like most of Series 12. However, yeah, this is really good. I think the setting's a bit meh. It's got lots of greys and browns, and the colour scheme's pretty bland, especially for this very bright and colourful series. It was quite a shift from the kind of reds and blacks of Kablam and the oranges and sort of greys of Demons of the Punjab. So this is quite a drastic shift. However, I think it gives it more of a dark and gritty tone, like lots of the Peter Capaldi era was, especially series 8 and 9. So it's quite good to have that sort of feel to the episode. I think King James I in this is absolutely brilliant. I can't remember what he's called. I think it was Alan someone. He does a brilliant performance as King James, and I really wish we could see him return as sort of a sequel to this, because it was still pretty good, but a bit meh because the plot was pretty weak, and yeah, it was just a bit of a bland episode, slightly forgettable even. In 8th place, we have the finale of this series, the Battle of RANSKOOR af Kolos. I've never had a list where the finale has been this low down, even with Series 6, which has a pretty weak finale, according to the general consensus. That was still quite high up, I gave it a 9, but the Battle of RANSKOOR af Kolos, given a 6.9, it's just pretty disappointing. I loved It Takes You Away. It's one of my favourite episodes of the series. It was episode 9, and this was just a huge letdown. I expected It Takes You Away to be part 1 of an epic 2-parter, and then we got this, which was Incredibly disappointing. I think it was a good idea executed badly. Exact opposite of the Witchfinders. In general, I just think it was a bit weird, having this kind of war-torn planet and this kind of alien spaceship. It was pretty generic for Doctor Who, but was actually a really good setting, and I really enjoyed it. I think it's evident they just use a quarry for lots of these scenes, as they do lots of the time for alien planets. But I think it kind of worked really well as setting. In general, though, I didn't really like it. Tim Shaw did not need to return. I did like Graham's character development in wanting to kill Tim Shaw, even if it would question his morals, because he wanted, obviously, to get revenge for it was his fault that Grace died. I thought that was quite a good lot of character development for him, and kind of ended his arc, which I wasn't sad to see him return in Resolution. I just think this would have been a more appropriate end to his character. I think he had a really good arc about dealing with his grief for Grace during Series 11, which makes it really enjoyable for his character. However, plot-wise, it isn't very good, and I don't know, I just feel like it was a bit of a disappointment and a letdown. However, lots of the time I consider Resolution the finale to the series instead, which would be a lot more satisfying finale because it's much, much better. Next up, in 7th place, we have the TSURANGA Conundrum, an episode a lot of people consider one of the worst of the series. I know it is in my bottom 4 places on this list, however, I still really enjoyed it. I don't really get the hate for it. I think the only weak thing about this story really is the Pating, the villain. I think it was quite cool, the abilities, and I think, again, it was a good idea executed very badly. I didn't really see the need to make it all little and cute and have these big eyes. I think had a bit more menacing, it actually would have been a really great episode, and would have reminded me of Midnight quite a lot, actually. I just quite like, it kind of reverted to the classic Who sort of feel, again, with just this alien spaceship under attack. It's just such a simple concept that, executed well, can produce some brilliant stories. This one, I don't know, I feel like the tone's a little bit off with the rest of Series 11, and part of it in the middle does drag a little bit. However, I still really like this story, and, yeah, it's very good. Not brilliant, but still very good. However, I don't really like the Pating, and the side characters are actually pretty good. The whole scene where that side character, the engineer, died, that was actually very sad. In general, though, it's just a pretty meh story. Next up, in 6th place, the best of the worst half of this series, The Woman Who Fell to Earth, the final episode of this series. It's nothing special, really. I think it's one of the weaker series openers and one of the weaker the Doctor's first adventures. However, I still think this is very good. I think it's always interesting to see a recently regenerated Doctor, and this is a perfect example of this. I think a post-regeneration story has a few jobs to do. It sort of needs to address any kind of shifts in the sort of status quo for the show, like the increased runtime, and just the overall feel of it. It's got to kind of establish the series feel and the era feel. It's got to introduce us to this new Doctor as well, and give us a good story as well. Sometimes it's quite challenging to do, as seen with lots of other Doctor's first stories, such as The Christmas Invasion, and Deep Breath, The 11th Hour. Some of those are really good, some of them are really bad. It's kind of hit and miss for a Doctor's first adventure. I think this worked very well. I've given it a 7.8, so I have very mixed feelings on it. In terms of villain, Tim Shaw, yeah, it's pretty weak, but it's quite a good concept. But, I don't know, I think the villain Tim Shaw just looks a bit stupid, to be honest, with the kind of all the teeth on his face and the blue skin. That sounds quite scary, but it really isn't. He just comes off as kind of a comic relief villain, and he just looks a bit ridiculous, to be honest. I do quite like the cliffhanger at the end, where they're all sent into space from that warehouse. That was really good, and I was kind of wondering how the companions would enter the TARDIS so suddenly at the end of the story, and that kind of explained it, how the TARDIS wouldn't really appear till the end of the second episode, The Ghost Monument. So, next up we have The Ghost Monument, episode 2 of the series, and the worst of the better half of Series 11. It's very good. I do like the whole concept of this space race between two people and, kind of competing to get to this other place first. And it reminds me of Classic Who a lot, having this kind of adventure story. This could have been a story, a lot like Marco Polo, which is just a kind of journey story without any aliens. This would have been so much higher had there been none of aliens. But of course they had to have some aliens in those ruins, which I didn't particularly like. The whole scene with them shooting at them though, that was actually a pretty impressive scene. But I don't know, I think this just would have been a better story had there not been those villains. It is quite good, the whole camera angle, cinematography, colour. I think they utilise it really well in this story, especially because they did location filming for this one. I'm pretty sure they went to, like, Dubai or the Sahara Desert or somewhere to do location filming, and it paid off very well, rather than just using green screens and, in studios and things like that, which I really enjoyed. The whole scene with the new TARDIS is brilliant. We get our first glimpse at this new TARDIS, which looks really cool. The whole crystal-like look looks really fitting for the 13th Doctor, and I think this is where she first becomes, like, a very good Doctor. She's my third favourite Doctor, fourth ever, after the 12th, 10th, and 3rd Doctors, and she's really good. I think this is where she kind of shines, especially when she uses Venusian Aikido. That kind of resembles the 3rd Doctor quite a lot, actually. So yes, I really enjoyed this, and the side characters are both very good. We have that kind of adventurer who's kind of fighting to save her family, and then we have this really annoying, selfish person who we're supposed to hate, and I really didn't like that scene where they kind of shared the money, because then that really annoying guy got half of it, so there we go. Overall though, still a really good story, and I pretty enjoyed it. I gave it an 8.4 out of 10. Next up, we have Demons of the Punjab, quite a step up with an 8.9 out of 10. This one is set in 1947 India and Pakistan, during the partition of India where Pakistan is created. It's a really good story, and I do quite like how it develops Yaz's character a lot, because it starts off with that scene with her grandma, like her nanny I think she called her, and then they went back in time to see her when she was young, and it was really good. And also seeing Yaz's reaction to the fact that she was marrying someone that wasn't her granddad, that was actually quite good, and again, a lot of character development for Yaz. I'm not that keen on those aliens, the kind of aliens who are actually respecting people instead of killing them. I do quite like the whole concept, but I think this would have benefited from being a pure historical, like pretty much all of the 13th Doctor's historicals, actually. Maybe besides the Haunting of Villa Diodati. But, yes, this is actually a really good story. I do like all the characters in this. I pretty enjoyed the twist with, Prem's brother kind of leading those people to try and, find that marriage. I thought that was actually a really good scene, and, in general, just a very good story. I really enjoyed it, actually. Next up, we have Kablam, the 7th episode in this series. You may notice that the 3rd Doctor is wearing a fez in this image, and that is what pushes Kablam for me better than Demons of the Punjab, just because of that callback to the 11th Doctor. It's so funny. But in general, that aside, it's a really good story and a really good concept as well. It's kind of evil space Amazon, and we don't really know what's going on. It just seems all friendly at first. I think because of the robot's design, we already know that they are going to be the villains. I mean, how could they not be? And yeah, this is just a really good story. I did like the twist with that person called Charlie, who has the same name as me, who turned out to actually be the villain of this. I actually really enjoyed that whole twist. And the whole thing, the ending with the bubble wrap being poisonous, is a bit silly, but I still enjoy it, and it's just a really fun story, quite underrated, and a little bit forgotten, actually. So, there we go. Next up, we have It Takes You Away, the penultimate, the 9th episode in this series, and it is absolutely brilliant. I've given it a 9.4 out of 10, and it's just really good. I'm actually coming up with a video in about a month or two, where it's top 10 most forgotten Doctor Who episodes. It Takes You Away is on the list. No one seems to pay attention to this episode, because lots of people didn't really like Series 11, most people didn't really watch it till the end. It's really good, this story is so good, it's one of the best in the series, and first of all, the setting is really good. I think the colour scheme, although it's mainly brown inside that cottage, it's still really good, and it uses all the camera angles and cinematography really effectively, and it makes it really enjoyable to watch. The setting is very good as well. This kind of creepy this creepy cottage in Norway. That whole scene with the blind girl and Ryan, that's actually genuinely quite creepy. I thought she was going to be the villain of this story for a second. The fact that we have this kind of in-between dimension between this the regular world in this mirror dimension. I thought that was such a good idea. And that villain in the middle dimension, I can't remember what he's called, but he was actually quite a fun villain. And we also have this really cool idea of the Solitract kind of stopping everything from coming into place in the universe. I thought it was really good, and this would have made for such a good part 1 of a 2-part finale, but involving the Solitract. But of course it had to be the Battle of RANSKOOR of Kolos to be the finale. But in general, I think it was really good, and again develops Graham's character so much because of his grief for Grace. I think it works really, really well. Finally, we have the 3rd story in this series, Rosa, in first place. Rosa, because of the title and the image, you can probably guess that it deals with some pretty heavy themes like racism and segregation in America in the 1950s. It tackles this really well, and lots of people bash it for kind of, being all about like morals and ethics now and just kind of teaching people that it's wrong to do certain things and sending out messages. I think this actually works incredibly well, and it doesn't really deserve the hate it gets. This one isn't as forgotten because lots of people really bash the villain in this, Krasko, who I thought lots of people don't really like him as a villain. Neither do I, but that's the point. You're supposed to hate him. I think he's a really good villain who was bad. He's very dislikable. That's the word I usually use for villains like him. He's very dislikable, and I think it's just a really, really good idea having this historical. It's almost a pure historical. It basically is, sort of. It's hard to explain, really. I don't really know whether the villain was a sort of alien or if he was just from future Earth or not. But either way, I think it's just quite fun, that second half as well, how Krasko's just doing little things to try and avoid Rosa getting on the bus, but the other the Doctor and her companions are stopping that. I actually really enjoyed all that, and yeah, this is just a really fun story in general. So, I hope you enjoyed this video, everybody. I actually really looked forward to doing this video, and I really enjoyed recording it. I should publish this in a couple of hours' time, so, yes, you'll all be able to see it, and next time. So, tomorrow I'm going to do the final video in a 13-video long series, where I rank all episode 1s, 2s, 3s, etc. Tomorrow, I will be ranking all 7 episode 13s of New Who. See you then, and goodbye.